reorder and resize the widgets, and we can tweak the colors and adjust the saturation. That's why we introduced the glass theme. Another one, the sunset. We have the fan speed, where we can increase it.
Hey, Satya here, CEO at OneHome. I have some news to share. We are doing some final changes and testing with the hardware for the OneHome Touch, and I'm happy to say that we'll be ready to ship at end of December. On the other hand, the software is almost done, and it looks really good. So let me hand you over to our CPO, Alyash, to take you through it.
Thank you, Satya, and hi everyone. Let me now show you what you can do with OneHome Touch. We will first go through how really fast it is to set it up, like less than a minute fast. We will also go through all the different customization options that you can choose from. We've really made this device to be a customization powerhouse. We will then also check the wave function, where you can wave in front of the screen and you can make it so that, for example, the room goes on or off. And we will also check different device types, from thermostat sensors to, of course, the SIP intercom control. Then we will show you how to protect your OneHome Touch with a PIN code, how to automatically show different rooms in an automatic layout, and much more. But enough talking, let's get started. If you have a look at the device right here, it's powered on now, but it's not yet paired. Of course, first you have to connect it to the local network, which in our case, it's already done via Ethernet, but you can also go under settings and connect it to Wi-Fi if that is your preferred option. Now, we will show you how to pair it. But first, let's jump to the OneHome dashboard so that I can show you what kind of environment I have prepared for which we will use the OneHome Touch. Here I'm in the OneHome dashboard, and you can see I have plenty of devices set up, different kinds of rooms, etc. And we will use this OneHome Touch in the living room. We will be able to control all of these devices here. Let me now show you how fast it is to set up the OneHome Touch. First, we go under the Touch editor, and we already see that there is one device discovered. Let's click on it. Okay. Now we see that the pairing number matches the one you see on the touch screen, so we know this is the correct touch. Now if we click select, we can choose between adding it in two different ways. We can add it as a new configuration, or we can add it to an existing configuration. This is useful if you want to prepare your configurations in advance, and then once you come to the project, you simply pair the devices and you're ready to go, like you're used in ETS. First configuration, then pairing. But here you can also do it the other way, the way we'll do it right now. We will now create a new configuration. We will put into the living room, and we will select it as touch. Create and pair. Now we see it's connecting, loading, and soon we'll see that's the screen. It's already paired, you already see what's in the initial configuration. And now we can start configuring it to our own preferences. First, we can remove this widget that we do not need. And we can select from different kind of drag and drop widgets that we can put on the screen. Let's go under the living room and let's see what devices we have here. First, we can place, for example, a main light. Let's put it here. Then we can select the color light. We can, for example, put it here. You have different kind of types of widgets for each type of a device. Then we can put a shutter. Let's put it below the lights. Now we have the air conditioner. Let's put it below the shutters. And at the top, I think we can use this suggestion here, which detected that we have different kinds of sensors in this room, and it already pre-built a widget with all the sensors in it. So let's drag and drop it here. Now we have them all on the screen. We can also change the configuration a bit if we need. In this case, for the sensor group, we can just hide certain sensors that we do not need. I think like this is perfectly fine. And the screensaver, let it just be as it is now. and click Apply Changes, Apply Changes. Wait a second, and we already have a working touch with the devices we have in the room. We can turn on the lights, we can go in, we can change the color if we want. We can open up the shades with all the different controls for the shades. We can set it to a specific percentage. We have the air conditioning unit. And of course, we have the sensors here, where they are rotating over all the values that we have set. And if we long press, we can also see all the sensor values here with a bit more details. So that's just the first setup. But now, let's go to customization. First, you can, of course, reorder and resize the widgets. For example, you can drag this one up, or you can make this one smaller if you want. Of course, the most important customization option is the theming. Let's look at the themes that we have at our disposal. If I click on the theme, you can first see that we are using a default theme. Basically, we can set up defaults for all the touches that we use in this project so that if we change a theme, it changes on all the touches. I will show this in a moment, but let's first deselect this so we can change it for this specific touch. Now we see we have a modern theme selected in a preset dusk. We can also set a different preset. Let's, for example, select this sunrise preset. Let's apply changes. And you can now see we have this theme. Or we can, of course, also customize our own color specifically for your project. Let's put maybe this one. Let's apply changes. And you can see almost immediately you get a different color, a different feel for this modern theme. Then, as we have shown in the previous video, we also have the minimalist theme, where we can also change different color lights, etc. Let's just go with the classic one. Let's again click apply changes, and we can see now this is a minimalist theme. And if I go, for example, into the color light, you can see that the whole mode changed. We could also tweak the colors here, but let's go to the analog theme instead. We can here again do the same. We can even have some gradients in this if that is something you fancy. Apply, and you can see here now we have this more classic push button look. But there is something we did not tell you. We actually added another theme. We wanted it to match more of the modern glass style that you can find in the latest iOS versions, and that's why we introduced the glass theme. Let's look at it now. We can click under the glass, and you can immediately see it's more bright, more colors, more glassy looking. And we can do different stuff again. We can change the colors. We can also add a dynamic gradient so that you get more vibrance to it. Let's apply changes. Apply change. And now we already have it on the screen. We can now see that this is more of a glass feel theme, and we can see that all the widgets adjusted to it. You can, of course, here adjust all the colors again. You can go to more darker mode like this. Let's apply this one. And again, here we can see how the designs adjust to the colors we have so that everything is still nicely visible and looks nice. Let's maybe do another one, the sunset. Again, apply changes, and we can see it here on the screen. Now let's see additional options of customizations that we have. First, we can set the font size. We can go very large for people who struggle to see on smaller screens. We can now see that everything is big, very accessible for maybe for older people. We also have a smaller font. Let's try that one as well. That's if you want to put more things on the screen, longer names, for example. But for us, let's revert back to the medium size. Click apply changes. Of course, it is not always enough to have one page, so there is an option to have multiple pages. For example, let's add page, and let's look at different kinds of widgets you can put on. First, you can select the text widget. This is something if you want to display like a name of the room or like a welcoming message. You can do different kinds of customizations here on this welcome home widget. We can show the image widget, but we will do that in the screensaver when we will be editing screensaver. You have the time widget, which we can put on just to show, like this. You can hide the date, show the date, etc. Then you have the display group. This is basically what we use to display the sensors. We have the scenes, and then of course we have all the individual devices that we can control here. One notable mention here is the Sonos. We showed it in the previous video, so if you want to check this out, there will be a link in the description below. But let's put a bit more devices here. Let's, for example, put a movie time KNX in. And that's enough for right now, just to showcase this. You can also, of course, hide the pages, move the pages. You can add up to 20 pages if you wish so. And you can also add the individual controls directly on the page. So for example, if you want to have the details view of the thermostat or an air conditioner unit directly accessible through the home pages, you can just use that. Let's check how it looks. Apply changes. Again, this is very fast. We can now see that we got indicators of pages at the bottom so that we know how many pages there are. We can swipe right. We can now see the description of the text, the watch, the time, the scene. And we can also see directly the air conditioner control. If that is something you prefer, for example, all you have in a room is an air conditioner device, then that's probably the first screen you want to come to. On the widgets, we also can change quite a few different things. For example, if you do not like the default icon, you can choose a custom icon. Let's say we want this kind of light. And you can also choose a different text. Let's say we can say, this is the ceiling light. This way you can have different devices presented with different names in a room than in a dashboard or in a mobile app. After a certain period of inactivity on the touch, we can of course turn off the screen or show a screensaver for a certain period of time. In this case, we can set up the screensaver here on the screensaver page. One important thing to note is that usually you do not want to change screensaver per each touch device in a project. If you have 10 of them, that would be a lot of work. Instead, we've given an option that you can use one screensaver for all the touch devices or the selection of touch devices in your project. So whenever you change this default screensaver, the changes apply to all of the touches that use this configuration. So here we can check that. The default screensaver already uses a time widget, which we can remove. And here we can add different kind of widgets on it, but when I asked my wife what she wants on a screensaver, she immediately said, I want our wedding photos. And this is honestly one of the best features for her on our One Home Touch. So maybe just for a sample, let's add a few here. We can go under the image. We can drag and drop the big image widget. Now we can click on it. We can go under edit images. We can do upload. Choose the photos. I have 3 of them here. Of course, at home I have plenty more. Let's do upload. Now we have the images here. We can set them to shuffle. And we can apply the default screensaver here. And we should see this on the touch, but first we have to, of course, configure after how much time the screensaver shows. For that, we can go under the settings and screensaver. Here, we also select that we use a default layout. We can also have a screen off or custom layout. And we say after how much time the screensaver appears. Let's just say 10 seconds so that we can see it, and the duration of a screensaver. Let's click apply, apply changes. And now after 10 seconds, we should see our wedding photos on the screen. Here they are. Of course, if I come close with the hand, I will again activate the screen and I can control my lights. As I mentioned previously, there are global default configurations that you can do that apply to all touch devices. Let's now look at that. We can reach this from various locations. For example, here under themes, if we use a default theme, we have a link to edit defaults. And we can see here, we can preset a global theme that we can use. We can already see how it looks. You have also more general settings, the timeouts, etc., the screensaver durations, etc. So whenever you want to change global settings for all touch devices, you can go here and change them in the defaults. And before we end with the customization part, let's do one little exercise. Let's say you have a hotel that has a very specific branding. In this case, you want to match the theme and the colors and the feel of the touch to the branding of the hotel. So let's try that. For example, we do not need here the temperature sensors, but instead we add a logo of the hotel. We click Edit Images, Upload, and I have this image prepared here. Upload, close, and it's here already. And let's say we also want to adjust the theme. We can go under the glass, we can select the midnight, that's the closest to what we want to have, and we can tweak the colors a bit. Let's tweak them to this, and adjust the saturation. Click Apply Changes. And that's it, we already see the hotel branding on the touch. In this case, you probably wouldn't even need the screensaver because the homepage already presents the branding well enough. There is one very cool feature coming with the One Home Touch, and it's the history of the configuration. You can always roll back to the previous versions. So now we have this hotel setup here. If we apply changes, we can say here hotel setup. For you, it would likely be the first version of the configuration for the customer, then the second one, and then you can toggle between them so the customer can try both of them. And you do not have extra work always changing the configuration. And now if we go here under snapshots, we will see that we have a bunch of automatic saves that are done on every apply changes that we press. But now we also have the hotel setup configuration saved so that we can always restore back to it. But now we can go back in time so that we do not have this hotel branding and go to the default one. If we click restore, we can now see that we are back to our original theme, original layout, original configuration in just one click. We apply changes. It's always easy to switch between the different versions that you've made in past. Now let's go to the wave action. One of the differences between a classic wall switch and a 4-inch touch panel is that on a touch panel you still have to look where you press. For the classic wall switch, you can just enter the room, slap your hand on the wall switch and the lights will turn on. To simulate that, on a 4-inch touchscreen, we have added a wave function. You can come in the room, you can just wave in front of it, and the default actions happen. For example, you can turn on the lights, turn off the lights, without even needing to look at the screen. Let's see how this is configured. If we go under the settings, we see the wave action section. We can click on it. Note that wave action triggers as an event that you can always handle in One Home automations as you see fit. But we have also added some presets. Here is a preset for room on and off. Basically, what this does is it helps you quickly set up a turn on and turn off command for the specific wave action. For the on action, we select a scene we want to run. I've already prepared a scene that turns on the lights to a specific value I want. It's called living room on. And for the turn off action, we can select different lights and socket we want to turn off as an off action. We can select them here, we can go under the living room, we can select the color light and the main light, save. And basically, whenever any of those lights is on, we will turn them off. If they are all off, we will activate the scene. Let's apply changes and see how this works. Okay, now we can see that the color light is on and the main light is off. If we wave like this, we see that the color light turned off. And if we wave again, we see that both lights turned on. This is one simple way to control a room on and off without touching the screen. Now let me show you how to use some of the most common devices on the touch panel. Let's first look at the air conditioning device. We can of course increase the set point temperature. We can long press to get into the details. We can turn it off. We can turn it on. We can always also see the ambient current temperature in the room and the desired set points the air conditioner unit is set to try to achieve. We have the fan speed, where we can increase it or set it to auto. And we have the modes. We have the heating, the cooling, the fan, the dry. Now let's put it in the dry mode. And we can see that the dry mode was applied. Another thing, we can look at the sensors. If we click on the sensor widget, we can scroll through different sensors if we have more than what we can fit on the screen. If we want to see further details of the sensors, we can long press. And here we see temperature, humidity, CO2 values, etc. from which device it's coming, the value, etc. And in the dashboard, we can set up the widget so that it can show many different values from many different sensors. Of course, one of the most important features in the One Home Touch is the SIP Intercom integration. Before I show you how it's configured, let's maybe just try it out to see how it works. Marcel, can you help me initiate the call? We now see that the door rang. We see Marcel in the video. We can pick up. And we can also perform some actions. For example, we can unlock the door. These actions are all configurable in the dashboard. Or we can, of course, reject the call. Let's do that. There is much more to the SIP integration than simply answering a call. You can always find the configured SIP intercom systems as well as all the other touch devices in the menu. We didn't show the menu yet, so if you swipe from the top, you can see the menu. Right now, all we have is contacts and of course access to settings. If we click on contacts, we already see the front door intercom. We can click into it and now we can see the front door intercom. We could call it, we could communicate with it. What's also very useful here, if you add multiple One Home Touch devices, they would appear here and you would be able to do a room-to-room calling. Of course, you can disable this or you can not allow calling between certain devices, but here they're accessible and you can always call to another room. As for the configuration, you can set up SIP in the One Home dashboard. We will create a full-blown separate video on everything you can do with SIP, how to configure it, all the different configurations. But for now, I can just quickly take you through the dashboard. You can set up the SIP settings under Settings and then SIP. You have different options here. This is the address for direct calling. You have identity and display name that you can change. You have a PBX registration if you need that. You can tweak the contact lists, who you can call from this touch, change the ringtone, etc. One important thing to mention is that One Home Touch supports SIP both in standalone mode and in PBX mode, so you can register it to a PBX server. Even more, you would usually use a PBX server to call from one intercom unit to multiple touch devices until one of them picks up. But for this simple use case, we have also provided what we call One Home ring groups, so that you can, without a PBX server, have multiple touch devices, multiple intercoms, and calling from one item to multiple items can be supported without additional hardware. We'll take you through the details for this in another video. When we did a survey with our community, a lot of you also wanted to show rooms control on this touch. So not only the control for this specific room, but also to access other rooms when necessary and see some of the devices there as well. And we've added just that. But of course, editing pages for every room, for every device would probably not provide enough value for the time it takes to configure it. This is why we have created automatic layouts for the rooms. While you can set up the home pages whichever way you want, we automatically pre-build the rooms if you want to use them. We are here under Settings and we can click on Rooms. By default, the rooms view is disabled, but we can also choose show all or customize which rooms we want to show. In the future version of OneHome server, we will also provide the floors, which are already displayed here. So we can select the whole floor, or we can say we do not need these rooms. And in the kitchen, we only want certain devices, not all of them. We click apply changes, and that's it. We can now control the devices in other rooms as well from the OneHome Touch. Let's see. We can swipe down from the top, and we can see we have a new widget called Rooms. We can click on it, and now we see all the rooms that we have allowed to be shown on the touch here. Let's just pick a room, let's say garage. And what you can see, we have automatically pre-built the layout. What we did, we showed all the sensors on top in a sensor group. You can click on it, you see all the sensors here. You have the lights in groups. So if I turn on one light, it says one light on. If I have two lights, it says all on. We have, of course, the shutters, the shades, the sockets, and all the other devices that we have. In this case, we have door lock and garage door. This way, in case you need rooms control, it can be done in few clicks. You can do what you need to do with it and not spend time on customizing the layouts and preparing all the widgets. But maybe you do not want to allow access to these rooms to everyone in the room. That's why we've added a layer of additional security on top of that. You can protect your screens, your widgets with a PIN. Let's see how to do that. We go back from the rooms into the settings and we click on security. Here we again have the global settings where we can set like a default PIN. For example, let's set it up here. We can also define what is protected with this PIN code. We can protect the settings so that not anyone can go into the settings and change parameters, especially, for example, in a hotel setting. Or we can protect the rooms, but we can also protect specific widgets as well. So if we protect the settings, we protect the rooms, we click save. We see that for this touch device, we are now using the default PIN code. We could also provide a custom one, and we also see that we are using the default settings for protection of settings and rooms. That's perfectly fine. Now we click apply changes, and we have the screens protected with the PIN code. If we swipe down and, for example, try to go under the settings, we see that the settings are protected, and only once we input the right password, we can see the settings here and we can adjust brightness. We can go into the cleaning mode, check some other details, change Wi-Fi, etc. You can, of course, also protect your widgets with the PIN code. If we go under the air conditioner device, we can select here to have a PIN for the air conditioner, and only the people with access could be tweaking these functionalities directly from the touch. As last thing to mention, all the devices that connect to the OneHome server, including OneHome Touch, can be used in OneHome automations to turn on the screen, turn off the screen, change the brightness, listen to the wave event and provide custom options. You can also see it in history, you can see it in the traffic monitor, in the graphs. One thing I forgot to mention, besides the default settings that you can use for all the OneHome Touches, you can also duplicate a touch configuration, tweak it a bit, and change it for a different room. This way, setting up many touch devices in one project can be very easy and fast task. One of the goals that we have with OneHome Touch is that it becomes a main interface to your home that you can access from within the room. This means that most of the things that come into the OneHome server will also be available through the OneHome Touch, which we will be expanding in functionality in the future as well.
So that's it. Software looks great, doesn't it? Can't wait to see it live at the end of December. So see you then with the Touch in hand.